Good day and welcome to the QEM Heroes webinar series. My name is Christine Wood and I serve as the Assistant Program Director for the Heroes Fellows Program at QEM. And for more than 30 years, QEM has been a national catalyst for STEM education transformation and research capacity building. Currently, the QEM network serves nearly 900 colleges and universities and reaches more than 8,000 individuals nationwide. This webinar is part of the HEROES initiative. The HEROES program brings together former federal scientists to lend their expertise and support to the STEM research and education communities. Our fellows are here to provide tools and tips for navigating the funding landscape, developing STEM programs and partnerships, and improving talent retention in in-demand fields. We hope this series promotes engagement with our HEROES fellows and provides valuable resources to our participants. As a note, the webinar recordings and slides will be available in the QEM Resource Hub. By attending this webinar, you will soon be added to the QEM network and granted access to the Resource Hub, so look out for an email. This event is fireside chat style. As such, attendees will have the opportunity to ask questions live. When speaking live with our panelists, your roles will be temporarily elevated to that of a panelist so that attendees can hear you and see you on video. When we elevate you to a speaking role, you may experience a slight delay as you are elevated to the panelist role. And I'm so happy to introduce our panelists, our Heroes Fellows today. Dr. Quincy K. Brown is the Principal of Futures and Innovation, leading education and workforce strategic development and advising. With more than 25 years of experience in engineering and technology, Quincy specializes in STEM education and workforce development. Most recently, she served as Director of Space, STEM, and Workforce Policy in the White House National Space Council. Her career includes senior policy roles across two presidencies in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Senior Director for Innovation at AnitaB.org, Program Director for STEM Education Research at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and Computer Science Professor at Bowie State University. Quincy holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and master's and doctoral degrees in computer science. Dr. Frances Carter Johnson is an innovative problem solver with professional experience spanning commercial, academic, government, and nonprofit sectors, as well as multidisciplinary content, data management, and analytic expertise. Her technical areas of expertise include data science, AI and data, evaluation, public policy, physics, and engineering. And James T. Smith III is a retiree from the U.S. Department of Defense. In his 20-year career at DoD, he served as a site engineer, software engineer, systems engineer, project director, and an engineering and physical science researcher at the North Carolina State University Laboratory for Analytical Sciences. In these roles, he developed and refined expertise in artificial intelligence and machine learning programming, software engineering, and 3D graphics. He also advanced mission-critical research and partnered with students and faculty from minority-serving institutions in support of research goals. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to our panelists today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. We appreciate it. And thank you all today for joining us for this fireside chat on AI ethics, responsible use, and strategy. This is a brief agenda. We don't have a lot to say today. This is not a webinar or presentation. We do want to hear from you all, but we'll talk to you a little bit about why we decided to do this, the format, and then we'll give some background and perspectives on AI. And then we'll open up for discussion where you can share your concerns, questions, or approaches to using AI ethically, responsibly, and strategically, and wrap up. We'll try to wrap up before the 1 o'clock hour. So if you have questions, go ahead and kind of prime the pump and be ready for them. Why this fireside chat on AI? In particular, we've done several webinars, especially James and I have done several webinars in our 10 Years Heroes Fellows this spring and summer on AI and how to use AI and research tools, AI research tools. And everyone is using AI, but have we taken a step back? We wanted to take an opportunity to step back and examine and discuss using AI and potentially emerge using it more strategically and responsibly. And we wanted to hear from you all. to see if you have some of the same concerns that we as a group and as a team have discussed as Heroes Fellows. So, the chat for today, Christine gave it to us. You have about 2 minutes to speak on each topic, but the chat is available for additional information. Please type your question or discussion into the Q&A box and listen for your name and look for a confirm pop-up button where that you'll need to select in order to be elevated to speak, and then share out your concerns as well. Thank you. That's the format. So, just talking a little bit about what is AI. AI is not a new science. AI was started or initiated in the 1950s. We probably all know that AI was designed to have machines behave and think like humans or try to think like humans. So, 1950s to now, what have we seen? We've seen robots in various forms now being used commercially and sometimes in people's homes. We've seen expert systems be designed and need what we think as little human input as possible. And we've seen deep learning in scientific environments. And initially, you mainly thought about AI in scientific environments and research labs. But in 2022, the first AI platform, ChatGPT, was introduced to the public, and that has led to widespread use by almost all individuals, whether you want to or whether you don't want to. There's widespread use of AI. And so, what is it? How does it work? If you think about it in layman's terms, I don't know who's had to explain it to their parents or grandparents, what it is. AI is what we like to say not independently intelligent. AI, whatever type it is, whether it's a robot or whether it's Chat GPT, is searching information that is provided to it or information that is available. If we think about Chat GPT and Gemini, they are using information that is available on the web. And if that information is not available, on that particular topic, then it can't search that information. And by searching, what do we mean? What AI algorithms work by token prediction based on probabilities. What does that mean in layman's terms? Let's think about advanced statistics. Their AI algorithms are using advanced statistics to calculate the likelihood of whatever the token or whatever the prompt, whatever the word that was provided, to calculate the likelihood of it appearing again. And so, as you hear terms like prompts or token, as you're providing prompts or asking a prompt is just a question that is being asked either to Gemini or to the healthcare AI system that's being used. So that's just a broad overview, trying to say it in layman's terms of what AI is. And I'll pass it over to my colleague James.
All right, so you have different types of AI out there. Everybody has used one form of this, but what I really want to say about this here slide is it's everywhere. Even on your phone, whether you intended to use it or not, they listening to what you say. That's how you get all your pop-up advertisement geared towards, oh, you talking, next thing you know, it's popping up. So yes, all this is being run in the background. Whether you want to create new content using generative AI to forecasting weather patterns using historical data, it's out there. Now, what's interesting to me about this slide is the agentic AI. And when I'm thinking agentic, the one thing that comes to mind is I don't know if you've seen the movie Terminator, where Skynet, where there you have all this AI things out there, all of a sudden it can just read, make changes, build. That's basically what agentic AI is. It's taking autonomous steps and making changes to folders, your code, or whatever. It's not creating anything new, but it's taking existing things and making adjustment to those existing things. And another good example of what's going on, if you take like Elon Musk, he wants to terraform Mars, go to Mars. And you look at the things he's been doing. You got the autonomous cars. Well, we got a rover on Mars now that can drive around. But as humans, we cannot live there. So what he's looking into is creating robots to where, okay, you get to the robots to a certain point to where they can take over. You can send them. You don't have to worry about breathing, but can they do the things that a human does, get something built without us being there. And that's basically what agentic AI is coming from. And we all, like you say, we all have used Chat GPT, and that's basically your assistive conversational AI chatbots that help you throughout your daily lives. But agentic is quite interesting. If you haven't seen Terminator, I think there's 5 different movies. I would highly recommend you go see it because that's basically what it is. It's AI with a mind that can make changes and build things based on the data that's being fed into it. Eventually, it gets to a point to where it can think on its own. Next slide. And another thing we want to touch on this slide is none of those other things can create, and only generative AI creates stuff. Uh, Everything else is data that's already available to you. Generative, if you want to create images, 3D models, you create new data, that's generative AI. And everything else feeds into generative AI if you're trying to be creative. And there's all types of tools available that do this. You take my son, for instance, my youngest, he's into music and he's using tools to create his background music. He's very happy. He doesn't know AI, but he's using AI to do a lot of these things, along with text generation. That's your chat box. You type it in, it read it, and give you information. So we're interacting with a lot of these things today, and a lot of people know it, and a lot of people don't like it. But hopefully, we can have a discussion on a lot of these different topics and see what everybody is thinking. Next slide. Ethical consideration.
Okay, so that's me. So what I wanted to do was kind of add some of the things that I think about when it comes time to, I'll say either whether to use AI or not, yet alone how to use it, but that there are some considerations in a number of categories, right? So I think about the human impact of its use. There are a lot of concerns, and people have, you can read a lot and understand a lot about mental health, right? About community health. And by this, I'm also talking about what's happening. You hear a lot about the stories around data centers and the pushback from communities around these building these large structures in there, literally inside the communities, back behind homes, residential neighborhoods, and then the human toll with regard to job loss, right? It's TBD as to what the impact will be on job loss, but we do know that there will be some. Some of it is happening now. Some of it is, more job displacement than replacement by AI. But I think we are, as people are figuring it out and this technology is scaling, these are things that we're going to have to contend with. I also think about, again, the environmental cost, right? Air quality, water usage, energy usage that impacts different communities differently, right? We don't have a control over which data centers, right? Even domestically, but also internationally, right? Where any of this is happening when we use it. There's also, as was mentioned, kind of like what AI is, right? It's about the data that is publicly available or that's been the systems have been trained on, and so there are a lot of questions about the fair use of original data and content, right? How do these systems learn so that they can generate new content? They're learning off of some of existing content, and do they have permissions for that? So there have been some cases about that. And then also about the interpretation or misinterpretation of data, right? A lot of this, with regard to output, depends on the quality of the input, and there are lots of challenges there. We also think about usage, right? Again, as I mentioned, do users even know the cost, and who is paying the cost of this use, right? Whose energies cost are you driving up by using all of these prompts, right? And so you think about, or I also think about, do the benefits or results outweigh the cost, and cost to whom, and the fact that it's not always appropriate to use in certain situations, right? In every situation. So there's that one. And then next slide, there are questions around, right, bias. These systems are created by people. Even the agentic ones, right? At some level, right, it starts with the human. and even and then in the data again that's used for training and creating them, there are historical biases, right? So if you are looking at a corpus of literature, you can think about whose stories haven't been told, right? If you're looking at societal biases and or like who's how are stereotypes integrated into the work that these models are being developed on or trained on, and also institutional bias, right? What practices or procedures, favor or disadvantage particular groups, and how is that embedded or codified into these systems? There are also biases related to funding, right? So again, who is receiving financial support to do this work? Who is, what kind of how information is presented, right? That is something that we need to think about. There are, implicit biases and also explicit biases. A lot of this can be seen in social media, and there are lots of stories around, particular tools returning some really nasty results. And so we have to really be mindful of that and understand that. And then also with regards to the computation itself, right? There is, again, how much data are you putting in? Are you using a sample of all of the available data? And if so, like whose data aren't you including, right? And how does that impact the results? And so there are lots of ways that people can use or misuse the training data and an interpretation of the results for, all sorts of ways in while using AI. So that is kind of what I want to say about those.
So now we are ready for you all to hear from you all, your questions, your comments. Again, to add your question or discussion topic to the Q&A, that's kind of the first step. We know that people can be kind of shy. So we have some questions and we have some considerations that we think should be considered to more responsibly use AI. This is just to get us started, but we want to hear your questions as well.
Can
Uh, Go ahead.
I was going to say over the weekend, this was Saturday or Sunday, I was at a store and kind of like overheard two, I don't know how old they were, young people, college age-ish. And one of them was saying, oh, they were waiting for it to be served like in line. And they were like, oh, we should just have a ChatGPT screen where you could just say, ChatGPT, tell me whatever. And then her friend was like, oh my goodness, that's terrible. And I will say, really excited to like eavesdrop into their conversation and hear the two of them talking about like why it would be so awesome to just be able to ask ChatGPT these questions, and versus her friend who was like, well, whose job would that be taking, and like and I was thinking, go young people, right? I appreciate the critical thinking on both sides, right? And that we are of one, I'll say, generation, but that young people are really, while we're kind of trying to figure this out as well, they are wrestling with a lot of the same concepts and same thoughts and questions, right? And a lot of this stuff is, still, time will tell. So I was thinking about, knowing this conversation was going to happen today, thinking about that as I was listening to them.
I think I would have been on board with the app being developed. I guess my understanding, anything that's gonna make my life easier, I'm always about convenience. But to your point, we had the discussion before where who is it going to affect to when you put certain things out there to process and everything else. I never thought about that until Quincy brought it up before, especially when we were talking about the Amazon warehouses popping up in people's neighborhood and the things you got to think about that goes into that. But I was just thinking for myself, oh, that's right down the street from me. Oh, my processing power is going. I'm gonna get it right away. But I'm not thinking about, or at least I wasn't thinking about the people that actually live in the community and the health that's affecting those people when the warehouse goes up as far as sound and the environment and everything else that you're going to deal with. So to your point, making a chat GPT app to help me out in the grocery store, I would be first one to download it and be like, okay, let's go. Not really giving a second thought, like, okay, how many trees had to get torn down and how many people lost their job because now you got this new tool that can do what five people can do, but now you can do it yourself and go and do it and take care of it yourself. So
As we do have two questions in the chat and we have some registration questions. So we're going to elevate the first question participant. And as we do that, we will just briefly talk about these considerations. So when we think about should you use AI or not, right? As Quincy just talked about, you have these different perspectives. Some people think you should use it all the time. Some people say it's a question. Um, does the action really ask yourself or scope the problem? If it's a small first world problem, there's a discussion now about whether it first world AI and app designs is somewhat different from other places, right? We are designing things to make life more convenient for us. But that's the question we're asking. Should we be using these AI systems and energy and data warehouses just to make life easier, or should we be solving larger problems? Should we be using these resources to help cure cancer or solve larger problems? Should we in some way begin to limit these resources? So always start with the problem and scope that question. Does the action really require use of Chat GPT? Is the AI option producing improved results? A lot of us professionals are using AI to update our resumes, but is it getting you more interviews? And why is it not? What are you losing or gaining? Are you losing some skills by always asking AI to do it for you? And just begin to think about those opportunity costs. Jane, go ahead. Excuse us.
I just had a question, the same question that I had posted. You had talked about AI not representing voices because historically those voices haven't been in the study material. And so I just wanted to know y'all's thoughts on, is it prompt engineering? Is it something that can be included in the search to encourage it to represent more diverse perspectives?
So I would say there probably are, again, it depends on what what the context is, right? What you're searching for, but probably ways in which you can ask it to search particular, journals or particular source types, right? Like that might be a way to catch it on to like steer it on the front end. But then on the back end, right, when you get a result, I think it's important to always ask, where did you get this from? Right? To ask for the sources themselves. And then you will have to do the work. I think the responsibility is on you. I'm saying Jane, you, but all of us, right? To then like discern and say, is this complete? Like, does something feel, missing? Right. And then you can go back and say, ask again, well, what about, if you add this source? Or what about if you add sources from like some gaps that you identify? But it's important that you understand where those gaps could be, because if you don't know, I don't know that the system is going to know, right? It just knows, I don't know what it knows. And someone's going to have to interject, right? To point out what might be missing. And I think that is one of those cases where, it's important to, like, for me to always check and ask, right? And then getting to the piece about, what is the cost, right? In trying to like prepare for this and doing other work, understand like, what is the cost? How much energy does this really take? How much water does this really take? Like I came across a stat around like 100-word prompt uses roughly a 1 bottle of water, right? Which, if you're just doing that, okay. But like at scale, it's a lot of heck of a water when you could just like do a little bit of reading on your own, right? James could wander around the grocery store on his own and like find the aisle for the jelly and make his list, right? Doesn't have to like use up, a gallon of water in order to like save him 5 steps in the grocery store. So I think that would be the way that I would do that, is to like, be specific about the prompts, about maybe whose voices you want to have included, but then also on the back end, ask where you got all the information from and like pick it apart, like, you would if you were asking a human, right? Where did you get this from? What did you find? What did like just keep probing that way. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I don't know, James or Francis.
Oh, I have to me, it's just, I'm gonna look at it from a developer point of view, building the model. It's all about your data, and it's all about what you're processing to build your model with. So if you want it to come from a variety of sources, you got to include that in the build process. Otherwise, it's only going to know what you give it. And so to have diverse perspective, you got to have diverse data set in order to get the information or get the model to get to the point where you're trying to get to. That's the way we've always approached it when I was at DoD. We want as much information as we can from various sources and we feed that into the model. But if you just taking information, say from People Magazine, then guess what? Your model is just going to be based on People Magazine, and that's it. So you got to have a diverse data set in order to make sure you're getting your perspective from a diverse. The model, the information coming from a model is coming from a diverse set of data.
I'll chime in quickly and say that using AI does not remove your content expertise and your research. So, and that's what James and Quincy are both basically referring to. James referred to it in data sets. You still have to study your data set and know what data is in that data set. And as you think about solving that problem, if you're working on data dealing with bombs in Europe, then data about bombs in the US is not going to be sufficient enough. You need to have data about bombs in the US. That's a military perspective. So you have to bring your expertise. AI is not independently intelligent. I'll stop there and we can elevate. We have Tareen. I guess if we could elevate Tareen. And as we're doing that, we will go to a question from the registration. Thank you for giving us questions from registration. Um, and Tareen's question is kind of related to that. So we'll use her question to talk about this a little bit more. But some of the questions were two questions. How can AI be effectively used to get clear output on a literature search on a specific topic of interest? And how can AI be used in research without compromising the integrity of authentic empirical inquiry? We did a webinar. James and I's first webinar was on AI research tools, and we talked about several AI research tools that are being widely used that will help you with literature searches, but will give you your sources. So we recommend that you watch that AI that webinar. The link is here. That link will be included in these slides when this presentation is made available. But how can AI be used without compromising? Again, it's not independently intelligent. You are still the researcher. So you still have to understand the sources, the topic that you are using to write your research proposal. It may help you once you've identified sources to write a literature uh, search or write a literature review more quickly, but you still have to check it. So go ahead, Tareen, your question that's related.
Hi, thank you so much. Oh, it's Taryn, but that's okay.
Karen,
The
excuse me.
spelling is, yeah, hard to interpret. I think my question was about the permissive use of AI in the universities. So I know at my university, whether students, so I'm a PhD student, whether students can use AI for assignments or other academic related activities is really instructor dependent. And my question is, could that potentially sort of be a question in the context of like access to education? So, for example, if one classroom allows the use of AI, but not another one, and then more broadly, across universities, if there are universities who prohibit AI versus allowing students to use it, like how could that be an access to education concern?
I don't, I don't see that as an access to education concern because you are, right, it's a tool. And I think as a professor, if you are saying, to me, I think of it like I may give open book tests and Francis may give a closed book test, right? You're still being tested. I'm just kind of putting some constraints on, or she's putting more constraints on it by not allowing you to use the textbook. And I'm saying, hey, feel free to use the textbook. But you still, as she said, you still are the owner of like the knowledge acquisition and the results and all of that. So I don't see that as a access to education issue unless it were about teaching you to use the tools, right? That to me might be a little bit of a different thing where you're not learning, you're not able to take a class that tells you how to use a tool. That to me would be access about learning to use a tool versus not being taught how to use a tool. But how you use the tools, I think faculty probably should have the right to like say what their policies are, in the class. And then that exists under the university, right? The department and then the university.
I agree. I mean, I figure if you as long as everybody has equal access to the tools, I don't see a problem. And like Quincy said, you're not teaching the tool. You just it's freely available to everybody. Or if one teacher want to opt and say you cannot use the tool, then I'm the type of person. If I go back to my college days, I'm like, okay, this teacher said they use the tool. This one here doesn't. I'm going with the teacher that allows me to use the tool. It's just a different mindset. What you're trying to get out the education process.
Taryn, I'm curious about what your stance is on this.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of future oriented and thinking about not just now, but as AI develops and as it becomes more pervasive. I mean, we can't really predict the power it's going to have, but whether it could embark upon this territory. I mean, if you're constraining the use of AI for one classroom or because it's different than, just opening up a book.
Right.
With these tools are so powerful that it gives you immediate access to so much information. Just think about the brainstorming power that has for one student and how that leverages one classroom that's able to use AI and creates an advantage for that classroom or for that university. I think I saw a program where in the China, students were encouraged to use AI even on the elementary school level, and how there were predictions that because of this early use of AI, how these students, or China would get more ahead. So I guess I'm thinking in terms, or just relating back to that example, is if certain students or universities are being limited because if its instructor says you can't use it, and then you're as a student, you're like, well, I don't want to infringe upon academic integrity policies, right? Then you're not, even though the tool is available, the frequency at which you're using this tool is going to be much, it's going to be much more limited than a student who has access to these tools and it's not constrained by a policy or an instructor.
Yeah. So what you're describing, right, I think is like uh it depends on how you're structuring your class or the assignments or right like the context around it. I think it's different to just say just use the tool in isolation, but if I have an activity or a lesson or an assignment, right, where using the tool is integral and helps you go further, that's different than me giving an assignment and then James going off and doing like this lit review on his own, and Francis just typing a prompt, and they both just return something, right? Like those to me are two different things. And so I think part of it is understanding how you really integrate it so that you are scaffolding learning, right? Versus, being able to use it. I don't want to say shortcut, right? Where it's kind of like out there and an option as a shortcut to the learning process versus like using it to scaffold your learning and having the outcomes. Like, I think those are different things.
Tarina.
So I just wanted to jump in on this conversation because this is my area of interest as well. And I think that what needs to get the Taryn, what you may need to get is clarity from your university about what it means to not be allowed to use AI, because they need to be more specific about that. Because it could be specifically that they're saying they don't want you to generate your papers using AI. That doesn't mean that you can't do a literature search and then hone it down and do it what James and Quincy and Francis have been saying. It doesn't mean that you can't do the literature search using AI. It just means that you may not be able to write the paper, which I can understand that with you not being able to write the paper using AI. So I think you need to put the onus back on your university and say, well, what does that, or your instructor, whoever, if it's an instructor thing, what does that specifically mean? And then also be guided by yourself and your principles about um, what that means once they tell you a more defined restriction on that. Because I do understand what you're saying about the competitiveness across the school, across classes, across the globe when it comes to the use of AI or not the use of AI. So it's very, and there's going to be a battle on this for years, but it's very clear that people have different perceptions of how to use AI effectively so that you're not dumbing down people's intelligence or ability to creatively think or process. So put it back on them and say, can you give me clarity on what it means not to use AI? And hopefully they'll be open-minded enough to have a productive conversation around that.
Shall we move on to our next elevation to panelists?
Yep,
Okay.
Yes.
Dorothy.
Thank you, Terry. And everyone else, we see your questions. We are going to get to them. Thank you all for the engagement and the live conversation. So I think we're waiting on Dorothy right now to be elevated. We did have three more actually registration questions as we're waiting for Dorothy to pop up, and they are related to um, what we're talking about. Is Dorothy still available, guys? Is she still on here?
Dorothy is here. Yes.
Okay, she is. Oh, I can't see her. Oh, she's down at the bottom of my screen. Go ahead, Dorothy, and we'll talk about these registration answers after your question.
I think she's frozen.
Is she frozen? We're
Yeah.
trying to unmute. So let's give her a few more seconds. I have those questions up on the screen. What are and we're talking about this a little bit, right? We're talking around it, but thank you for submitting questions on plagiarism. What are the best plagiarism tools to identify AI generated content and research? We got this first question in our first webinar as well. But some industry standard plagiarism tools, we've all heard of Turnitin. I think high schools, colleges are using Turnitin. Grammarly has an AI detector now as well. I Authenticate, Originality AI, Copy Leaks, and this is just a start, right? You sent the questions in, so we wanted to have an answer for you all. But these were ones that I was able to find. Definitely put in the chat or come up and let us know if there are others that you use. And how should AI generated data be cited in written documents, right? That was the conversation that we just had. And the first step is to check your organizational policies before using AI. So your class, right? Is your professor allowing the open and shared use of AI? Will they not ding your grade if you use AI? If they say no, then you would be wise not to openly use or tell them, right? And it's not hindering your learning. You are still learning the content that professor wants you to learn for that class. He wants you to learn it based on the tools that he has gathered. If it's allowed, then verify your findings before using the results. Verify them. That's been some of the questions. Verify them with your book. If you have a book for the course or the materials for the course, verify them with other searches on your own or research articles. Then, if you're using it, save the transcripts of your prompts, whatever input you're putting into whatever system that you're using. And then finally, how do you cite it? APA, MLA, and Chicago Style have incorporated AI guidance into how you should report out when you have used AI for an assignment or any written document. So the field has caught up, and this is what we would recommend. Dorothy, are you able to unmute now? And Dorothy she had a comment that she put in the chat.
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay, yay.
Yes, I'm so glad to be a part of this community today. This is very interesting and dear to my heart. I am, of course, a professor, and we have independent thoughts about how we use AI in the classroom. And some are very limited on the use of AI, and I think some of that is because they don't necessarily know much about AI other than ChatGPT. How can I use this to help me expedite or improve my classroom lectures? But they don't know enough to share with the students how to actually use it, how it can be useful to them. And of course, I've taken courses, 8-month course was my first a couple of years ago, and I take periodic courses to upgrade and become more familiar with the subject. We've got to teach our students AI. And we've got to inform them that there's more out there than just ChatGPT. It's a good start, but we're going to be lost. There are so many who say that it will be limited. I hear 4 out of 5 people in 5 years or so could lose their positions. One person in a meeting said, it won't be because of AI, it will be because of the person who's beside you and knows more about AI than you do. That's how you will lose your position. So it's going to be very important. I know in 95 or so, when the internet and the email came on board, I remember being on the campus and everybody was so excited and giddy about it. 30 some years later, we're still excited and giddy about it, and we're still at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to making contributions to the industry or even making more money. And we go to school, we get all of this intelligence, and we lock ourselves into a web where this is what I've learned and this is what I'm teaching. But we need to learn more so that we can teach more, because life is not getting any wealthier for any of us. Well, some of us, about 1% of us anyway. But we need to get on the bandwagon and start learning and teaching what these other people are doing and find ways. And life is not all about money, but it does pay for our gas, our eggs. So we need to look at how we can help our students focus more in the area of the now, and be able to focus on how to learn more about AI and how to use it when we get into the workplace.
I thank you for that, Dorothy. I'll also add, and Francis alluded to this earlier, is that also thinking about how we want to use it, right? I mean, there's some uses, like I talked about the ethics and the, bias and all of that, that to me are just silly and frivolous,
Right,
right?
right.
But it has the potential to solve some of our longstanding, health, societal challenges. And so I think using it outside of any context, I don't know, right? Like you're going to get funny pictures and memes and like updated resumes. I have no interest in that.
Right,
But,
right,
right, if we are thinking about curing diseases, precision medicine, if we're thinking about food security, right? I mean,
right.
there are some challenges that we are facing that young people and people of all ages, really, really care about, right? And so I think it's like it's even beyond just learn how to use it, but like really understand how you can harness the power, right,
Exactly.
that it provides to solve some really, really important things. And that to me is the part that I don't think we do enough. And backing that up, of course, you have to know how to use it to be able to think about that. But I think that's where I'd like to push, faculty or push students, right? And to Taryn's question, right? Like in assignments, not just like using it for a lit review. We've been doing lit reviews forever. Like go to the library,
Yes.
look it up, whatever.
Right,
But
right.
like, how do you use it to advance your field or advance
Exactly.
knowledge, right?
Exactly.
Like, I think those are the things that I would be more comfortable with if that's what we were doing, but I'm not sure how much of that where is the future direction, right? Is it 50-50, resume updates versus solving societal issues? Or is
Right.
it like 80% of it is just asking ChatGPT how to find jelly in the grocery store and we're not really harnessing, right? Like, so I don't know where we are, right? I'll be honest, right? I don't know where we are, but I'd like to see us moving more towards the direction of using it and harnessing its power
Exactly.
to solve challenges and
Abs-
getting faculty to understand how to do that in the context of their discipline, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. So thank you for
Yes.
your
Yes.
comments.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mhm. Thank you.
I would just say, when I was working with the students at Fayetteville State on this topic, uh, this is in the computer science. They the one taught me that at the time they was using something called Cursor, and was writing their code and solving a lot of the problems that we were asking, and he was doing it at record pace. And so I know for a fact in the computer science department, I know if you look at what's going on in the world, a lot of them have lost their jobs and everything else due to AI because AI can write beginners get into the computer science field, they lost their job because AI can do that part for them right now, all the way up to about mid-level. But at the same time, like I tell them, you cannot come out of school right now not knowing how to use any of these tools. That's just a fact of life at this point. Especially if you're a computer science, you better know how to build something rather quickly, how you put in your prompts into Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever you use, and be able to edit that code that it spits out and get it up and running as fast as possible. So it's just something you have to learn. It's not going anywhere at this point. So I would always say when I work with students, if you're not using AI at this point, you already behind. You know.
We've Carolyn.
Yes, I have elevated Carolyn to panelist, and she has not appeared yet in the panelist pane. So we're
And
waiting.
while we're waiting, I just want to address the anonymous question that was put in the chat. Is around good practices to normalize checking the veracity of results obtained from using a Gen AI tool. And I mentioned earlier that, just asking, right? Like I have found that just saying, where did you get this? Where did you get this data from? How did you figure this out? Right. Again, depending on what the result is or the question that was asked. And I think, I like primary sources, right? And if it came from, some source that is not a primary source, I'll ask, is there a source, pick one, right? Like that you're looking for. And so I think it's just doing it, right? Normalizing as you're teaching it. If I don't know, since it's anonymous, if you're on the faculty side or a student side or an employee side, but like just building that into your practice of saying, where did you get this result from? Where did you get this? How did you figure this out? Or how did you compute this? Like asking the question very directly, and then being critical about the answer is the way that I would do that. So I think Caroline is here now.
Yeah. Um, Good afternoon, and this is an interesting topic. And I believe that there's nothing we can do at this time with the AI. The train has left the station. The only thing is for everyone to uh, incorporate it into our daily lives. So I believe AI is a good tool for human right now to use. It makes life easy. Some things that we need to do for a long time, it's cutting the time short. So, however, it is a double-edged sword. It's good and it's bad. The problem is in the use. If AI is in a good hands, it is wonderful tools. It's human being will benefit from it. However, if it's in the wrong hand, that's where when it's disastrous. However, the backside is for me, the concern that I have is for the young ones, the young people. How much their of this young one depending on the AI will affect their critical thinking and honesty. For me, I'm a professor. You give them an homework, they go and use AI and they return a beautiful answer that you think, oh, your students are genius. You give them the same question in the classroom, and you have every one of them will be looking as if they haven't seen that question before. So this is my concern. How much should they depend on it, and how can we curb their dependency on the AI for them to develop their critical thinking and to use this tool in the right way?
We're going to use that question, your question and Jane's question, as a commercial for our next webinar, our next fireside chat. Our next fireside chat is scheduled for August 4th, and it is a fireside chat on AI in education. Similarly, in September, September 22nd, we want you to join us for a discussion on AI in your classrooms, preparing your students to use AI effectively and ethically beyond the university. So we'll talk about more about what companies are looking for and how we can backfill that in our college and K through 12 classrooms without losing that critical knowledge. We do have some thoughts about that and we want to hear your thoughts. In between there, in July, we want to talk about AI funding opportunities on the federal, private or nonprofit and state level as well. And then we'll wrap up the year with some AI research workshops, some hands-on places, some hands-on opportunities for faculty to dig in and start using AI, start getting some experience with AI platforms. Come to the rest of our talks because we want you to vote on which platform you all would like to use, and that will kind of help us guide our decision in what platform we introduce to you. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for your engagement before this meeting, this fireside chat, and engagement today. And if you'd like to keep in touch with us, our emails are listed here, and we also have a webinar feedback form. Christine, do you chime in here?
This is where I chime in to thank everybody for your engagement today. We had a wonderful conversation. As you see on the screen right now, you have QR codes for our QEM events page where you can sign up for future webinars. Our Heroes webpage where you can engage with our wonderful Heroes Fellows, seek tips and tools and feedback from them on your grant development proposals and any other STEM education issues that you want to address with them as consultants, and the webinar feedback form. I'm going to post the link into the chat so you all can have a chance to evaluate this webinar so we can continuously improve our product. Thank you so much for attending today, and we wish you a wonderful day.
Before you go, can we have a recording of this? Can we have a recording of this meeting?
Yes, the recordings will be available on the QEM Resource Hub. By attending this webinar, you will be added to the QEM Resource Hub. You'll receive an email inviting you to access the QEM Resource Hub, where you'll be able to find the recording of this webinar as well as the slides from the webinar.
I don't believe I haven't received anything.
You won't receive it until within 48 hours after the
Okay.
webinar is over.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Grandma? Also, I just click on the chat now to do the survey. Okay, I can finish up now. Thank you.